I'm going to start right now. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that also just as part of the historical context that the project did receive funding through the bond bill. So we are so excited and appreciative of the cities and the mayor's, ask of that funding. So it's a very, very amazing. And what did I want to say? Oh, and Jamila, thank you and Anna and the team for organizing these events, and especially on such a short timeline. I know we were working really closely with the schedule for Sakai and Living Labs throughout the summer. So I'm really appreciative of being able to participate this summer. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Well, we appreciate all your support this summer as well, Sarah, and field trips and everything. So I'm going to turn it over to Sakai now. So and she's going to lead us off. Again, like drop your comments, and I'm going to start paying attention to the chat a little bit better now. Your comments, questions, and we'll keep an eye on the conversation coming up in there.
All right, good evening, everyone. And to reiterate everything Jamila said, thank you all for being here so much. We're happy to see you back at this final workshop for this summer and walk you through what we've done and what we plan on doing moving forward. So just an overview for today of what we're going to talk about. So we're going to walk through all of the previous workshops and our field trip, as Jamila said, and just what we've learned from those experiences, and then going into the current design, so the most updated version of the refined design, the identified priorities that we got from workshop 3 and how we moved that forward into this new refined concept, and then identifying some questions that we have going forward that we also heard at workshop 3, as well as that we have just kind of open-ended, not necessarily determined yet. And then we'll have some opportunities for feedback and discussion, but feel free to chime in the chat, in the comments, or raise your hand if you have a question about anything as we walk through. So starting off with workshop 1, we started by addressing key elements through some case studies and key feature posters. So what that looked like, we had 5 key elements in the very beginning that we kind of came up with based on some brainstorming about what was wanted for the site and from the site by the community and by community facilitators. And we came up with sustainability, education, programming, a community resource hub, and operations. These all seem to fit into the array of what the Rodney Reservoir Community Gardens should be and what we want it to be moving forward. And all the little words in the back, those are all the things we want to address, what we want to feel. We want it to be thriving. We want it to be focused on community and education, food sovereignty, and a vital resource for the community. So these are the 4 case studies we did, and we did one based on each key element. We did only 4, so we left programming out for this run. I mean, not programming, we left operations out for this run. But we did Garden of Earthly Delights, which was centered around the programming that took place there. And we really liked the way that they had a lot of community outreach, community gardening, and gathering and inclusivity. They had community dining at their site, youth learning, play. So just a bunch of great approaches to programming in a gardening site. Another one was Jones Valley Teaching Farms, which was focused around the education. So this is, as said, a teaching farm with a 3-acre site that's dedicated solely to teaching not only youth, but also adults about how to garden, and having a full entire program where people can come learn and then teach others out of that program as well. And then we have the North Square Gardens, which was a community hub. And this one was based a lot around culture, which is something we liked and we wanted to possibly bring into this site. And we like their features of their culture-based community hub, where a lot of people from not only this one culture, but different cultures can come and enjoy this space and feel that, community within it. And last was sustainability at the Edible Schoolyard. And they have a lot of sustainable practices here. They have composting restrooms, they have green roofs and solar energy. And they also use all of these educational aspects for the sustainability as well. So kind of like co-tying the education with the sustainability. And we looked at these as the inspirational sites for what could we do with our garden. And then next we did key element posters. So we did a poster for or all 4 key elements and what these can look like in a space. So before we kind of looked at sites as a whole, but now we're looking at what things can we pick out that we might like to add to our site. And off of this, we had people walk up to the posters, put sticky notes on what they liked, what they didn't like, what they had questions about. And some of those were, for instance, sustainability. We looked at some rainwater catchments up here and how that can be visualized. We looked at some solar gardens that happen in Jack's Solar Garden, where there's like a symbiotic relationship between plants and the solar energy. We looked into community stewardship, green roofs, and stormwater management. For education, we had a big focus on citizen science, so we wanted to point that out. Gardening apprenticeship programs and garden-based education for all age groups, not just youth, but thinking of how we can get everyone intertwined in an educational space. Looking at demonstration gardens and STEM-based education, how to bring even the high schoolers in. So all different aspects of education. Other poster was programming. So at Kings Henry Walk, they have a food sharing and dining with this like rustic pizza oven there. They have movie nights at Barson Community Garden down here, which is a great, program and use of space for the garden, bring community together. Kids gardening outreach, herbal workshops, just a bunch of different approaches to programming in a gardening space. And then for Community Resources Hub, we looked at how can we implement some things that can make our garden a resource. And that included a free farm stand, community meals, tool swapping events, a tool library that, the whole community could come to and maybe like rent a tool from, composting, teaching gardens, and a cultural garden as well. So we want all of these aspects to come together. We don't look at them separately, we look at them as a whole. So we want everything at this site. We want it to be, honestly, the whole thing should be called Community Resource Hub, because like all of it is that. But yeah, all of it together would just have a great community sense for the garden, and that's what we want moving forward. So now I'm going to switch over to Jamila really quick to walk into the Baltimore field trip that we had. And I'll toss it over to you.
Great. So indeed, our next step was to really wanted to go to some sites. We still have dreams of going to Philadelphia, to some places. Maybe we'll go with Alexa and friends. So stay tuned for that. Or, and there's a lot to do, but we thought it would be great as a community building exercise to go see these sites, talk to some of the folks there. And we had the opportunity to work with Professor McKay Jenkins, who's a professor in environmental humanities at the University of Delaware, and also really involved in food justice work there. So he had a hand in all these sites. So our first stop, and we went on a Sunday, a very hot Sunday. Next slide, please, Sakai. Our first stop was the Nepali American Community Cultural Center, which was a rural site just outside of Baltimore. Let's go back one slide, if we can. Can we go back one slide, Sakai?
Oh, I think it's just
Perfect.
taking a second to sync.
Oh, it's just lagging. Yeah, sorry about that. So this is a site that, it had a really interesting backstory. The community purchased the site and had to go through a lot of legal, legalities to be able to do their project here because there was some opposition to them doing it. But it was really amazing. It's a, home to like Buddhist and Hindu spiritual communities. But there's this really big Nepali community in Baltimore. And they have a lot of like native, heritage speakers of Nepali language. And just a really cool site where they have language and culture classes and a lot of community building events. So in their site, they were doing reforestation and green infrastructure projects, as well as a very big community garden. And there were also fruit trees. And so we were checking out, their reforestation efforts and their catchment systems. I think another thing that we really took from this site, and there's several folks that were on this trip on the call that might wish to, share something. But we learned that, it was a really cool, the garden itself was an amazing tool for intergenerational interaction, with also like a cultural heritage moment, because The elders of this community held agricultural knowledge and spoke, their home language, and the younger folks speak English and want to hold on to their language and and learn about these techniques. So it was like this great opportunity for that kind of sharing. And also that they were growing not only like native foods native to this location, like pawpaw trees, but they were also growing like crops specific to their Ayurvedic traditions as well. So that got us inspired to think about how we could bring that into our garden with communities adjacent to Reservoir. We can go to the next one. The next spot was Rock Rose Food Justice Project, and McKay is like directly involved in this project, and we're hoping he will, work with us some more in the future. This is on one of the, who knew, Baltimore City has all these city farms, like a bunch of them. This particular one houses half community gardens and half devoted to this project. They don't have like municipal water running. That was one of the amazing things. We're like, wow, how do they do it? They do it mostly with rain catchment, and then there's city deliveries of water. But they have 20 crop rows, 8 outdoor raised beds, and a greenhouse. And then they donate all their food. They're volunteer run, and they donate all their food. And they've tried different models, but their current model is to donate them to kitchens that make them into meals, and then provide them to the folks who are experiencing food insecurity. And putting together that kind of system, we had a lot of partners involved in this, the sessions around this. There's a lot of appetite for this community that we really want to carry forward going on. Okay, and the next one, the final stop was Still Meadow Community Fellowship, and the Still Meadow Peace Park. It's on that site. Another really interesting site that actually had a lot to tell us about, things for the whole Rodney Reservoir Park. So we're starting to get beyond ourselves here a little bit. But this church happens to be a resilience hub that like started connecting to its community after like a local flood. And they had this 10-acre site adjacent to them. This is urban Baltimore that wasn't being used and wasn't well tended, and had like of 10 acres, and they, they got themselves going, and through partnerships with the U.S. Forest Service and with University of Delaware, started this major reforestation project and ecological reforestation project. And they were using some really cool strategies that we could think about to create engagement at our site. Like they had planting strategies, first of all. I'm sure, Alexa, you and Ari have been thinking about this. Like, I remember what the varieties are, but it was poplar, and another one they were planting some trees that would grow quickly to start creating canopy, and then other slower growing trees, that we want in the mix over time. So that was cool to hear. And then with experiments, they tried like, direct planting some, and like nursing some seedlings in a greenhouse for a year and then planting them. And they tried mulched and unmulched, and like looked at what the results were. And this slide right here with the SNF 104, this was one of the ways that visitors could give feedback or submit pictures about the growth of the forest. And so there was just a lot of cool things, and they do a lot of invasive species removal, and that's a thing even with the introduction of new trees, because the ivy gets right in those supports you use to like support these saplings. And something else is really cool we'd love to think about for our site. They were going to be launching their first round of hosting a master naturalist training program at the site. And they had some workforce development and youth core training programs going on at the site that were really inspirational for us. We can move on here.
Right. So after we did that Baltimore trip, shortly after we had workshop 2. And at this workshop, we presented some diagrammatic concepts based on what we heard from workshop 1, not workshop 2. And what we heard working with community experts, Katie and McKay Jenkins, Katie Pollock and McKay Jenkins, learning about outdoor learning and food justice. So the first half was kind of a design breakout. In this session, we looked at some outdoor kitchens, kind of going back to that key elements, but getting a little more specific. based on what we heard at the previous workshop, and trying to show some examples of what those features could look like. And the things that were heard that were really wanted were an outdoor kitchen, rain catchment systems, learning spaces, and composting systems. So we looked at some different examples of that. There was 6 of each. We couldn't all fit on this slide, but 6 of each for each poster, and the people were able to walk around, once again, use their sticky notes to comment on each image and what they liked or didn't like about it. And from this exercise, we had some priorities outlined. And going into it, it was basically we wanted as many plots as possible. We wanted a larger composting system, space for youth education, adult education. ADA accessibility was a concern. Building reliability on rain catchments moving forward, because we do have municipal waters, but we want to build reliability on rain catchments. Space for community meals and citizen science. And there were some specifics in that. So as many plots as possible, but the number we wanted to hit was 80. We specifically, once again, wanted a larger. We want to fix key spigots that goes in with the municipalities. And they loved a lot of things about the old sign, wanted to bring them back, such as the old free farm stand, the herb spiral, and kind of just reiterating things from that main priority list, but getting a little more specific. And we wanted some areas for shade, some seating, storage and refrigeration, and sink, and designated communal plots for food sharing, that free food element, and had a talk about outdoor learning environments. And the major goal of the session was to think through the designing of the garden and how the outdoor learning and food justice could intertwine into our garden moving forward. We're missing something. There were also those diagrammatic plans, which should be in here somewhere, but I'm not seeing them. Maybe let me just see 1 second.
I can probably grab them out of a presentation too, real quick, Sky, if you want.
Yeah, I'm throwing them in real quick. No problem at all.
Also, hi everyone, this is Anna. Sakai, I think that you were breaking up a little bit there. I thought it might just be me, but I think maybe we can just rewind like 1 minute. And I don't know if maybe turning off the video might help.
Okay. All right, so we'll rewind back to talking about workshop 2. And what I was saying was that I don't know if where we picked up, but we identified some priorities, which were the number of plots we wanted, which was 80 was the number we wanted to hit. We wanted a larger composting system. We wanted to build reliability on rain catchments. We wanted spaces for not only youth education, but adult education as well. ADA accessibility was a concern as well in the site, and we wanted an addition of citizen science. And with the municipal waters, we wanted to fix some problems that were happening with that, which was like shaky pipes and leaky spigots that happened. And some things that were loved previously was the free farm stand and the herbal spiral. So we wanted to reincorporate that into the new design. And we also wanted to add a rustic kitchen of some sort, storage and refrigeration, a communal sink, and pots. So going into the first option, we had a defined approach to design, and this is one of our diagrammatic concepts, where we kind of laid out where some of these elements could go and fitting within the space and seeing if we like the location of them. So in this defined approach, we kind of separated areas and dedicated certain spaces to certain programming. So a certain space for youth plots and learning space, another space for communal plots, kind of all within each other, and then breaking out, having not only the main access on the sides, but also in the center, as well as like a kiosk where there could be some educational signage there. People can stay updated on what's happening in the garden, as well as maybe a donation box for that free food giveaway. We have a drive-in on the left side over here, as well as 2 compost bins to make a larger composting, a gathering area that would be so serving as temporary storage, and a restroom and catchment off that gathering area. And we also have this phase 2 box here. So this is when we start thinking about when the cell phone tower will be removed. So starting off, let me also video so that so starting off in phase 1, we kind of have this, you know, all this area over here and as well as over here and a little bit of the edge around this phase 2 area. So we wanted to try to think of what we're going to do with this space and how it's going to intertwine into the phase 1 space. For instance, we have some additional plots that we want to put here, and then having that larger kitchen gathering area come in. We have half of that out, which could be like a smaller sink area with maybe just a small prep stand, a weather station, and a smaller compost to start before we are able to get into that cell phone tower space. And that's when we would grow the kitchen into maybe a seating area with some picnic tables, a larger rain catchment, and a larger storage space as well. And then we also had some terrace foraging on this edge, trying to see what we can do with that, you know, sloped space, and a public pollinator garden and orchard on the outside of the fence. And then for the other concept, we called this the intertwined approach. And this one kind of has everything like mixed in. It's not as like defined space. The youth plots are kind of just right in with the rest of the community plots, and would be just a part of the rest of the community. And then the compost bins are kind of blocked off a little bit more in a larger space, coming in the phase 2 with a weather observation station, and the kitchen gathering area still being in that same space and a large rain catchment. And going to the left side, we still have a drive-in with 1 smaller compost on this edge, some ADA plots, and a kiosk just here at this 1 entrance, but we still do have 3 main entrances along and a storage space coming in.
I'll just add a little point, which is that in offering these 2 concepts, we meant to give folks an idea of a spectrum of possibility, and then wanted them to like start marking them up with other possibilities. So we, you know, again, it wasn't an either or approach. This was trying to get people thinking about, just get their creative juices flowing.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if you guys heard this part, but we had another part of this workshop was talking to community experts, which was Katie Pollock and McKay Jenkins, the same person we had the Baltimore trip with. And Katie Pollock came to talk to us about outdoor learning, like classrooms, and McKay Jenkins came to talk about some food justice and food sovereignty that he's been a part of in Baltimore, and shared their experiences with us and how we can add outdoor learning into our site, as well as going towards remediating food injustice in the site as well. And a lot of this section of the workshop was really helpful in getting people to picture what more could go on the site. So I saw a lot of people writing on their sticky notes as soon as they heard McKay say something. For instance, he was like, oh, if you want to add hoop houses, it's a great way to also do rain catchment. I saw people go, oh, sounds great, and write it on the sticky note, put it right on the plan where they thought it could go. So it was a really good interactive discussion that occurred during this time and afterwards as well. And then moving into workshop 3, which was more of a discussion of materiality options and a facilitated discussion of the key features that we had previously. So we showed this design concept, which is a little more refined than the bubble diagrams are. We wanted to get some hard edges on things and really lay out exactly how many plots we could have in this space, what we can do with it, and where things are really going to go. We wanted to start getting some forms and thinking about materiality moving forward. So this concept kind of reflects a mixture of the 2 previous concepts. We put together some elements that people liked, took away some things people didn't like, based off of what we heard. And made sure to kind of keep that intertwined approach and like defined approach kind of in together. We intertwined the two. So in this one, we really wanted to try to prioritize space for programming. So there were like a bit lower number than plots we wanted. I want to say there was about roughly 60 on the site. We still had, ADA accessibility with these keyhole plots over here, and that's how we the keyhole plots on the left side. And then we also had the drive-in on this site still. We had a kiosk at the front, and we actually took away that center entrance. So we just moved to 2 main entrances on both sides. We put the herb spiral in here. We have a gathering space with a sink station in the front, and there's also like a picnic table underneath it. So a lot can happen in the space. Going through, we have just regular community plots on both sides, 3 10x10 compost bins, a large shed for storage. And then we had these question plots of if we wanted to have these in phase 1 or phase 2, and if it was worth it based on when the cell tower will be coming out. So if it's coming out in 5 years, do we want to put these beds up, use them for 5 years, and then possibly have them be removed in order to take out the cell tower? Or do we just not want to do it at all and put some temporary things there? And then this basically stayed the same, but having just additional plots, a hoop house here, rain catchment, and a kitchen gathering space. And the rain catchment would kind of come off of both of those structures, and using this leftover space for different forms of citizen science. And then this is like a oval organic shaped outdoor classroom with some learning plots and like a classroom seating area with some benches that would face a shed for storage, as well as a chalkboard. And we still have that public orchard and pollinator garden as well in this design. And this is just what some of those features can look like. So this is what the sink station could look like in the gathering space. These are keyhole plots, the herb spiral. And then we have what that outdoor classroom could look like. And this is an ADA approach to the learning beds. And this is kind of the big vision for what that kitchen gathering space can look like, with not only a sink, but some refrigeration, some prepping area, and some picnic tables, and then the composting bins as well. And then we got into some materiality. So this is looking at the drive-in slash the central path points and what materials can be looked at for that. And we didn't really come to a consensus during this workshop, so we wanted to just keep the list going of what could be for those paths. So one of them was concrete, and we looked at the pros and cons of each. So the main 3 were concrete, grass pavers, and asphalt for this drive-in and central path. And then we also wanted to look at the garden pathways, so like the aisles of between the garden plots. And the main 2 that we heard for these was grass and mulch. And the main pros and cons between these 2 was really maintenance. So grass would need maintenance and mowing. And it's kind of just like weighing the pros and cons of those, and how that's going to be facilitated moving forward with maintenance and costs. So some priorities we identified. Once again, we wanted as many plots as possible. This was heard a lot during this. So we kind of backed up on the plots in the workshop 3 design concept, and we heard we want more plots than this, as many as possible. So making more rooms for more plots, space for individual gardeners, as well as community production was heard. So having designated plots for that free farm stand or free donation box, and also just community harvesting, another programming element. We wanted a natural feel with minimal hardscape. So trying to balance hardscape and natural, and what material could make that feel the least hard and more natural. And then effective composting systems that match the scale of the garden site. So if we're adding more plots, we need more compost. And there was also one for a staging area and areas for browns and preparations for composting. ADA accessibility was also reiterated again. Equally distributed municipal water access throughout, so where the spigot's going to go, and are there going to be hoses, how is it going to be distributed? Because there was a lot of concerns with how the hoses were previously, of them being tangled in the grass and decapitating some of the plants if it was dragged over a plot. So that was a concern. And still having space for community gathering and like open space for community meals. And wanting the idea of the kitchen in the long term and the sink in the short term. And then also, once again, working towards those rain catchment systems as we move forward and the reliability on those. So that brings us to our refined concepts that we have now. So this is our first refined concept. And this one has a drive-in in it. So it looks pretty similar to what the one we looked at in workshop 3 is, except we added a lot more plots to this one. So we actually realized that the previous plots that were at the community garden were 10 by 8 and not 10 by 10. So the main thing that was heard was that they wanted the same size plots as before. So once we heard that, we were like, oh, perfect. We have even more space to work with. We can fit even more plots now that they're just the tiniest bit skinnier. And we were able to do that. In this one, we also bumped the fence down a little bit so that we had a little more space for more plots. And in this space, there is a total of over, I believe, or at least close to 100 plots in this site. And that is with a combination. That is with a combination of full 10 by 10 plots, half plots, and keyhole plots. So there's 5 keyhole plots. But there's 5 keyhole plots, so that's that ADA accessibility aspect. And if you roughly add the numbers together, I should have noted it somewhere, but 50, 28, that's gonna come out to almost 70, 80, and then plus the half plots and the community plots, as well as the education plots, it gets pretty close to 100. So we're hitting as high as we can and dedicating a lot of the space to more plots. We still have this drive-in over here, and in this materiality, I have like some grass pavers, but that's not decided or anything, just to show you what that could look like. We have some grass pavers, and for this one, we use grass as the option in between the aisles, hoping that that drive-in can serve as a way to easily get lawnmower access up here, bring things up to the site and easily have access to maintenance. And then we still have, we have 3 10 by 10 composting beds over here. And then, or not even beds, they would be a lot higher than the average bed, but composting bins. And we have an area for staging and browns behind that, which is about 10 by 20 feet. A small shed in the corner over here. We have a path that goes all the way around on both sides. And once again, we still have those 2 entry points on both sides. We still have that same kind of shape for the youth plots, but there is more of them now. This is a total of 9 youth plots, still with that outdoor classroom, but we wanted to feel a little more centered and more of a discussion pit. So we have some facing inward, as well as some a hoop house, the rain catchment, kitchen gathering space, the space for citizen science. And since there was more of a need for more compost, we have another space for composting to come in phase 2 as well. So yeah, that's for the drive-in approach. And then we also still have the public orchard and pollinator garden. That was something we kept pretty steady. It seemed like a great use for the space and a great way to hit that food justice thing as well, with just making food free for the city. And any park goers or anyone that walks by can just grab some berries or grab anything. And also pollinators were really important to prioritize in the site too. So we have quite a few pollinator gardens. Wherever you see this little texture is where some pollinator plants would be. And then this is the second one. And in this one, there isn't a drive-in. So this option would be solely either wheelbarrow access or walking or any other small type of way of getting things around the garden. We still have the same number of plots, so there's nothing super different about this. Just the only difference is that this space would be used for community production. So this would be a 6 community production plots instead. We have like a little pergola here for the main access, and there is like a kiosk outside of the fence as well. So this could be where the herb swirl is going to be. So that's kind of another way, the food justice and having free food, and refrigeration could go under here as well, or at least some type of donation bin for food where that community production happens, and can be thrown in that bin for people to walk by and grab some food if they would like to. But other than that, the rest of the design is pretty much the same. So with that being said, I know we went through that pretty fast, but if we want to hear any questions or comments you have, we can go back through slides if we went through anything too fast. Now's the time for that. And I'll also look at the chat as well. It's the time. Yes, the outdoor classroom is also a workshop space. So that's a space for not only youth, but once again, the adults as well, and could be used for any needs of gathering, even other than education or different forms of education.
Yeah, so let's open this up to see who's been involved, anyone who's been involved in these, in this process may have other reflections to add to this, and Professor Wick too, we know you've guided us along this process. You might have some things to add at this point. And people might have questions.
Also, I see some comments I was breaking up. So if you need me to go back to any slides that you didn't catch, please let me know. And
and I will say, if we go back to the concepts, the last two concepts we looked at, we did have that last session, we discussed the materiality and had some presentations, and then we had facilitated sessions at the tables and took notes there. And one of the questions we had that came up was, do we have to have that drive-in space? And so this is an experimentation of whether, so we don't know if that's a negotiable, but that's a question that came up. I'm seeing, okay, I don't know if you want to take the question about accessibility.
yeah, so without the drive-in access, there is still in Hinge's design that they propose, this path is still drivable. So I feel like if it was needed, there is an access point where either wheelchair access can happen kind of on like an uphill battle, but I believe it's walkable. So with the grading that they have, and there would still be able to have wheelchair access to the site, it would just take a bit longer than if it was, with a van that's ADA accessibility. But there still would be ADA access to the site. There isn't only the steps, there's also an entrance further down at the other side.
I can actually clarify a little bit about that. And I'd also, I would love to hear a little bit more about the pros and cons and what people were thinking about why they would want a drive-in spot or not drive-in spot. So as far as handicap accessibility goes, if someone is in a wheelchair or pushing a stroller, we are adding 2 new ADA accessible spots to the park. And so that's sort of like midway along Clayton Street and then up a little further, closer to 8th. That's sort of where the grade meets the ground. We are leaving the 2 existing entrances that are shown here, which are both stairs, which can still be used, but ADA accessibility will be further down. The drive-in itself is not intended as a sort of like a drive-in to park for daily use of the garden. It's strictly there for maintenance. And so it would be to either drop off things, pick up things, manage trash, other things like that. So it would be accessed during work days perhaps, but it wasn't intended to be a handicapped accessible parking spot that could be used during gardening time. So not having it won't actually have a large impact on ADA accessibility. It will still be accessible. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about sort of that, the conversation around having that spot for deliveries or maintenance versus not.
Yeah, so a lot of what we heard at the 3rd workshop and previous workshops before that as well was just the curiosity of if it was needed, because there is the want for using as much space as we can for more plots. and for other needs other than just a drive-in. So that was the main concern with that. And also if it's needed, if there are needs for things to be dropped off, picked up, if there is going to be a work between Parks and Rec and, you know, maintenance. And in that case, I feel like maybe it would be needed. And then also wanting to get away from the hardscape, minimizing hardscape, as Jamila said in the comments, and maintaining that natural feel of the space, because it created kind of a back of house feel to that area. And we wanted to still be natural. So that's kind of where the idea came in, with having the grass pavers there instead of another material such as asphalt or concrete. So it looks more natural and a little more pretty to the site, rather than just like a pad of hardscape material that maybe isn't being used to the best of its abilities. Yeah.
And correct me if I'm
And I
wrong,
see some
Sakai,
other-
we could, to go to some of these things, can we back up here? Can we still have a vehicular access on that path that you have in the second concept 2, the without drive-in?
No, so this is not a vehicle path. This is a
Okay.
5 feet path all throughout the site. But up until like this point, things could be technically dropped off if needed, or if there was maintenance, there could still be that access based on Hinge's design.
Laura Filon here. I was one of the people who recommended not having all that hardscape for the drive-in access, mostly based on from historical precedent of Dirt Day, as we call it. You know, that's like one time a year. So it seemed the original design from Hinge showed large sort of almost industrial like bins for compost or other materials, and a truck parked there, which may be more the traditional Parks and Rec kind of idea of how things should be. I don't, you know, I guess ultimately the Parks Department will probably end up demanding that kind of access, but we're kind of hoping not to have that much hardscape. The difference would be, even if we had to do work days to haul in mulch, you know, once a year or twice a year or whatever, the difference would be we wouldn't have to do it in a bucket brigade going up and down stairs anymore, because there's still that drive-in sized entrance going to that leads near to the garden by the planned structure, that the pavilion structure that you have in the park design, if that's still in there. So I don't know that from the garden's point of view, I don't think we need that space being used that way. Now, if the park department says, no, we need a place where we can park our stinky trucks and haul our giant tractors in and out, I don't know if we'll win that fight. But from the garden point of view, I don't think it's necessary. I think the plots and the more natural feel would be more conducive to the aesthetic of the whole design, plus more plots. He's back.
I hear that 100%. It's tough to have the front door and the back of house needs at the same place. So absolutely. Hopefully no one would ever park their trucks and tractors there. It would only be used temporarily, but I hear you. Thanks for those comments.
And maybe there's a middle way that would allow, like, get a little wider there to allow a motorized vehicle to dump the dirt up there per
Yeah, and
April.
we did make so before the yeah, we did like cut the proposed drive-in in half. So this is like the most minimal amount of space that would be needed for a drive-in. So it's kind of like just enough space to come in, back up, and turn back around if needed. So it's about 32 each way. Truck is typically like 18, so just enough space to get in and out. And that space could also be used for other things as well. As just open space, it's great to have an open space in a site like this where you imagine people coming, visiting. If there is a time where the park is open and there's say like a big Halloween pumpkin carving event happening, you want to set up some tents and some tables and have kids getting face painting, like that's where, you know, that could all go. leaving an open area for some other programming and things that can just pop up and, pop down.
And there's definitely some growing pains we're all going through as well, for knowing that we have a whole beautiful, amazing park right next door too. So we could like take our pumpkins down there. Like we're like so used to just being up there. So
Yeah,
so
there'll
we
be
were
a
trying.
pavilion and more space right outside. Yeah.
Folks have other, thanks for adding all that you added, Laura, there. Do other folks who've been at these sessions have other considerations we didn't cover here that you'd like to add? Or people who weren't able to attend, questions you have about the site, or things you'd like to see? There was a great comment up the thread about going to see some composting systems. That is definitely something that came up again and again at our sessions. Like, and at the last one, like we had Bridget Gregory there, who's another, she does compost for her job. And I know, Sean, you have a lot of knowledge too, but like we got really excited about taking the compost's temperature, like how like the citizen science and like the soil science, how it can all wrap together so we can put the integrated pest management issue, and like how if we want to achieve sustainability in this site. And we don't have any of our signage showing up here. That's a layer of this that isn't present, but it's very important as well. Yes, our flower power solar sculpture. We're still dreaming of that. And some other things, we got a slide on this, but we can just talk it through too. We had, we ended up putting a pin in operations, like it kept coming up. How were the procedures for getting plots? How do we reserve the outdoor classroom space? Yeah, still dreaming, Laura. If can we decide materiality? What's the budget? What's the trade-off? If we say we want the expensive rose porous asphalt or whatever, those kinds of questions. Lots of questions around that tower. It's session 2. We were thinking, should we make the central path wider so they can take the tower out that way? That we were like, no, it's not going to be big enough. So we came back the other side. We saw that you guys had left some space on the back end too. So we were like, wanting to hear more, hear from you all what you know about timing. And then, especially, across these sessions, we were very blessed to have many partners in the community, present and getting excited about the site. So we, want to sit down together and keep looking at, the programs we can build together and with partnering. There's a question in the chat.
Yes, I was going to say there is some rain catchment in between the hoop house and the kitchen gathering space in phase 2, and there could still be smaller rain catchments as well off of the phase 1 gathering area, and basically any raised structure. The sheds, all of those could either serve as white rain catchment or solar. And then I think that's a question for you, Jamila. I don't know about that one.
So, or for Alexa, will the plots be prepared for planting at the start of the season? So spring 2025?
I can give you all of the updates that I know at this time, which is, for anyone who's driven by it, the demolition phase is complete. As I think Sarah mentioned earlier, the bond bill came through, and so that is excellent. With that money, the city is currently getting the construction next phase contracts worked out, and we hope to start as soon as possible. I can tell you that we are aiming to be complete by the spring, but I don't want to promise you that, because you never know what kind of stuff we might run into once construction starts. But we are currently documenting the design of the garden that you guys have seen, so with, super minimal like shifts here and there to make it fit on the site, but not a lot of changes or anything that would surprise you, with the exception of figuring out this garden part of it, which will go into documentation soon, now that we have all of this great info from you guys. So I can say fingers crossed for spring of next year, but no promises made. Is that fair?
I think that sounds.
Fair.
And of course, I'll just speak up as the former operating entity that it will, you know, a lot of those questions will have to come through that pin that Jamila put on the operations piece as well.
Great.
We'd like to take down your name though, Greg, that we are like, you know, I think, you know, I've gotten one email to me to circle up with West Side Grows as well with this, that we can keep collecting names, you know, in the meantime to add people to the wait list as we have a pin and things and are sorting it out. I think that makes sense. For sure. And we're hoping, you know, with the souped up, you know, with all the beds, you know, that we're going to be able to accommodate everybody. Thank you, Whitney.
Jamila, are you gonna go over next steps too?
Yeah, let's hear. You got some next steps lined up, Sarah?
Always thinking ahead. Well, I just wanted to thank you again, and then also just acknowledge if anybody hopped on later, you know, we obviously have Professor Anna Wick, we have Sakai. Thank you so much, Jamila. So many, you know, members of the community gardeners, like some of the original gardeners are on this call who started the Rodney Reservoir Community Garden back in the day. So it's amazing that we've had that knowledge, you know, continue into the design of this future space. So that's just incredible. I always talk about how I myself have not gardened a ton, but man, am I learning so much from all of you. And I just wanted to make sure that folks know who Alexa is. And I think, you know, we did mention it, but Alexa runs Hinge. She works for Hinge, and they are the landscape architect that designed the park design through the community design process with the working group and, you know, Green for the Greater Good, West Side Grows Together, City of Wilmington, driven, you know, over the past however many months. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows who Alexa is, and it is so important. Thank you, Alexa, that
Of
you were
course.
here.
And I would say that all the folks that were part of the workshops are the ones that designed the garden. We just,
Absolutely.
not us. But we are documenting it for you.
Right. That is absolutely right. And thank you for, I guess I don't know all the terminology, but yes,
Yeah, that's
as the
fine.
documenters,
Fine.
totally agree with you. So thank you for that. And so I just want to, I'll be more short worded here, but I just wanted to say, as far as next steps, you know, Jamila and I are going to talk with Anna and Sakai and others, and hopefully have an opportunity to meet directly with Alexa and Ari and the City of Wilmington, Ian Smith in particular from the direct, you know, the Parks and Recreation, to share, you know, all this is being combined and shared in the Zoom meeting. And hopefully if there are any other questions, we can answer, you know, to the city at that time. And then I do know that Hinge had been discussing with the city and us some potentially additional workshop opportunities, if, you know, based on what is gleaned from these meetings, if there is a need for some additional ones or an additional field trip, as many folks have mentioned. So I would just say that, like you said, Jamila, and I'm probably not doing the best job like you would have, but it doesn't end here, right? Like this is just kind of this close of this phase. And it's a huge, I think, component that will go into the design. And so thank you all again. But we definitely want to stay in touch with everyone who's attended. And Jamila, I asked Jamila, like, how many folks attended these workshops? Because I think I've been to every single one. And I would estimate close to like 100 people, you know, different people over the course of these workshops were able to come, maybe a little less. But that's just like huge. And so many of those ideas and designs will hopefully be incorporated in the final. So we want to keep everybody included and up to date. And I'm sure Jamila does a great job with that. So I don't know if there's any other, like we can come up with a timeline and make sure to share it with you, but we don't have those dates set just yet as far as the next follow-up.
Absolutely. And thank you, Sarah, so much for throwing that together so nicely. That's key stuff. And indeed, like we got really excited about that Norris Square garden and, you know, about some of those Philly sites that and Sean was talking about the composting along with gardens as well in the chat over here. And so we could see like doing more field trips for sure. We did like a mega field trip on the hottest day in the world in Baltimore. So, and Sakai drove a van, so did Anna, of course. but would love to do that again. And one of the things we didn't get to do that we'd love to do is a bilingual session of some kind too, with maybe on site of some of our other neighbors, you know, as well. So there's always more to do here. So. Yes, a fall workshop. Yes, fall field trip. Yes, indeed. Okay.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Sakai, for all the great work that you've done last summer and this summer, and for the whole UTEL team, Anna and Sarah and Jamila, everyone. Thanks for compiling all this.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here, Alexa, so very much.
Yes.
And thank you for everyone. Again, if you're new to us, I see some new faces here. Please feel free to drop your contacts in the chat or write to us. Agreeing for the greater good be@gmail.com, I guess, or just hit us up from our website. You can just go to our website and put yourself in contact. But if you drop it in the chat here too, we will put you on our mailing list and be in touch. So thank you, everybody. We'll be reporting out an e-newsletter soon to all the followers as well. Thank you for all your efforts, and until next time.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Michael. Yeah, yes, Greg, if you're getting emails from Jamila Noor, that's me, then you are on the list, no doubt about it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And is Darlene Mr. Williams over there on 6th Street?
Excuse me?
Oh, I was talking to another person here. I wondered if Darlene Williams was a neighbor over on 6th Street.
Oh,
Might not be on anymore. I understand.
I'm just
Hello,
waiting.
yes,
wonderful
I'm
job.
here.
Hi, Darlene.
Hello, darling. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm well, good.
I met a
Good.
Mr. Williams yesterday over there at 6th and Washington. Is that where you are?
No,
You're another Williams. Okay.
no, I'm actually on 9th and Franklin, but I own a property on Rodney Street, the
Okay.
500 block of Rodney. Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Wonderful. So
Yeah.
wonderful. So glad
Yeah.
to see a new neighbor here
Well,
on the
good.
call.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here, and thanks for having me.
Of course. Of course.
Yes, and I would like to also get more involved. So please just continue to send me emails.
Great. Wonderful. We will. We'll send a wrap up on this, and we will follow up with folks about how to, make sure everybody's getting on the wait list, or on the wait. There's more spots than there are current former gardeners, so we're in a good spot to
Okay, well,
accommodate
I'm a
everybody.
beginner, so I'm a learner, so I
Yeah.
learn fast, and I like to garden.
It's a beautiful place for gardening. Michael will tell you.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Have a good night.
You as well. Bye-bye.
No, I just want to say thank you, Jamila. Thank you, Sakai. Y'all have, well, we are all part of it. We're all doing our little bit,
Yes.
all the little stickers, all the writing, all the meetings. It's all helps. I know it's all helps. And one day we will reap the fruits of all our labors. It'll
Yes,
be
we will.
years from now, and people will remember back when. We're like, yeah, I remember. Yeah, I was there. So yeah, this is it's a great thing. We had a good work.
It's all paying off.
We had a
We're
good
seeing it
work.
happen.
Oh yeah, definitely. They say it's what you become in the process. That's life. What you become in the process, and this is going to be good.
Another way, that's a beautiful wisdom I hear. Like, good in the beginning, the middle, and the end. All the way through. Absolutely. And you're right. It is post-it note by post-it note. It's like people coming together, that community fabric we're building. So
Yep, it's been great. So Look forward to next time, and I'll talk to y'all later.
See you later. Say hi to
Okay.
Casey for us.
Okay,
I will.
bye-bye.
All
Bye.
right, bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Jamila, did you need anything from me that I should?
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Sakai.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
You know,
then.
rest
And-
onto the next thing, and we'll regroup. We'll
Sounds good.
once you've
Yep.
done, we'll regroup. Okay,
All
take care.